Have you ever seen a 78-year-old farmer lift a $70,000 pickup truck clean off the ground with a backhoe just to teach a self-appointed HOA cop a lesson in boundaries and the law? I have, because that man was my grandfather. And that was the moment the entire exclusive Pine Heights neighborhood realized they knocked on the wrong damn gate. It all started with a guy who called himself a neighborhood security officer and thought it was okay to block our ranch gate every single day. But when he crossed the line with my girlfriend and had the nerve to call my 4-generation family ranch an aesthetic problem, the game was over, because we're not the type to play by jungle law. We're the type who know the law better than the guy holding the clipboard. And this is the story of how one small family taught an entire HOA system that you don't mess with the land of someone who knows how to protect it. I'd never seen my grandfather smile like that. Cold, calm, and calculated as he gripped the keys to that gleaming black Ram pickup and drove it straight into the creek behind our house. But you have to understand, he's a corn farmer, not the kind of man who looks for trouble. Still, when a self-declared HOA cop parked his truck across our family's ranch gate for over half a year, every line got blurred eventually. His name was Travis McConnell, and he called himself the Director of Security for the Pine Heights residential zone. He dressed like a real cop, wore a knockoff badge, and carried a radio big enough to make it in an action movie. But the truth? He was just an unemployed blowhard, hired by his former mother-in-law, who also happened to be the HOA president, to protect the community's image. Ridiculous. The only problem? The community he talked about didn't include the land my family had lived on for 4 generations. Travis began parking his fully blacked-out Ram 2500 right in front of our main ranch gate back in January. Every morning when I went to check the cattle, I had to loop around the back fence, like I was the trespasser on my own land. We tried everything: phone calls, formal complaints, even direct conversation. He just smirked. That smug, I do what I want and no one can stop me kind of smile. But what really lit the fuse was when Travis crossed the line with my girlfriend. Her name's Anna, a final-year law student, sharp as they come, not someone you can intimidate easily. One afternoon while I was out in the fields, she dropped by to bring my grandpa some fresh bread and coffee. As she was opening the gate, Travis approached. According to Anna, he rested a hand on her arm and said, "What do you really think about? Your farmer boy? We're throwing away your future for him?" She walked away immediately, but that was enough to torch whatever patience I had left. This wasn't just a power-tripping HOA nuisance anymore. He was a real threat. That night, I sat on the front porch with my grandfather, Walter Briggs, 78 years old, 2 tours in Vietnam, 40 years running heavy equipment, and not a man who'd ever back down from anything. I told him everything. He didn't say much. Just took a slow sip of tea and looked me square in the eye. "You know I used to be a combat engineer, right? In the Mekong Delta. The VC liked to blow up bridges, but I knew how to teach them a lesson. Every time they touched something they shouldn't." I got chills. That was the moment I knew. Grandpa didn't see Travis as an annoyance anymore. He saw him as an invader, and from that moment on, we weren't playing defense anymore. Let me back up for a second. My name's Daniel Briggs, and I wasn't always the kind of guy who'd consider going to war over a dirt road. I studied agricultural business at Texas Tech, spent a few years working the feed markets in Amarillo, and then came back to help run our 180-acre ranch outside of Lockhart. Life was simple: cattle, crops, and quiet. But quiet doesn't last when HOA vultures move in next door. 5 years ago, the farmland around us started sprouting prefab houses like weeds. Developers bought out half the county, paved over the fields, and slapped up a gated community called Pine Heights, complete with faux colonial fences, speed bumps every 50 feet, and of course, rules. Pages and pages of rules. That's when the so-called Pine Heights HOA came to power. Led by a woman named Lorraine Blackwell, a silver-haired tyrant who believed lawn aesthetics were more important than property lines. She was the kind of person who said, "We need to preserve the character of our community while bulldozing the character of everyone else's." At first, we didn't interact. They had their cul-de-sac kingdom, and we had our land. But that changed the day Travis McConnell showed up. The first time I saw him, he stepped out of that truck like he was auditioning for a role in a cop drama. Black tactical boots, sunglasses despite the overcast sky, belt holster with a flashlight that looked suspiciously like a taser. The guy was 6 foot something, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that looked permanently irritated, like the world owed him a thank you card and a medal. He parked his Ram 2500 right across our ranch gate and stood there like he owned the place. I figured maybe he was lost, maybe GPS screwed him over. So I walked up and tapped on the window. That's when he rolled it down, gave me a slow once-over and said, "You got a problem, son?" I blinked. "Yeah, you're parked on our private drive. I need to get through to feed the livestock." He smirked. According to the HOA survey, this is a shared access road, community property. I could feel my blood rising, but I kept my voice steady. "You're mistaken. This road's been in our family since 1925. We've got records going. Back generations. That's when Travis got out, slow and theatrical, like a gunslinger in some spaghetti western." He leaned against his truck, pulled out a clipboard, and handed me a piece of paper that looked like it had been printed in someone's basement. "Here's your notice," he said. "Enforcement in progress. This area is under HOA patrol authority. Expect daily presence." That piece of paper had no official seal, no signatures, no legal credibility. But it was the tone that got me. The way he delivered it like it was gospel. Like I was the one trespassing on his fantasy. When I called the county office, they laughed. "The HOA can enforce within their neighborhood," the clerk told me. "But your ranch? That's outside their jurisdiction by a long shot." I tried, showing Travis the boundary markers. He didn't care. He even had the gall to accuse me of threatening an officer. An officer? He wasn't even licensed security. He was a hired ego with a badge-shaped delusion, and every day after that he kept parking there, blocking our entrance, just sitting in his truck, windows tinted, music rumbling through the diesel growl, watching, like he was daring us to react. But the day he put his hands on Anna, no, that wasn't just disrespect. That was a provocation. She was shaken, but she didn't want to let it show. Said we should call the HOA board. "Go through the channels," she suggested. But I'd seen what the channels got us. Static, loops, voicemail boxes. And Travis? He was their attack dog. He didn't act alone. He had backing. That night, as I stood by the barn watching the dusk settle over the fields, I felt a weight on my shoulder. Grandpa. He said nothing at first. Just handed me a folder. Inside were maps, old survey charts, easement boundaries, a picture of our property line marked in red ink and official stamps. Then, beneath it all, a photo from 1972, him in uniform, standing next to a half-finished bridge in some jungle in Vietnam. "They tried to blow it up 4 times, he said quietly. "We rebuilt it each time, but on the 5th, we laid a trap instead." I looked at him, confused. He nodded toward the road where Travis parked. "You don't always win by force, Danny. Sometimes you win by letting the enemy think he's got you beat. That's when he gets sloppy." That's when he told me about something he called Operation Sweet Creek. Apparently, the little stream that cut through our land wasn't just a childhood playground. According to Texas state water rights law, that creek was legally binding. Its boundaries defined property lines going back a century. Meaning, Travis wasn't just parking on our driveway. He was parking on land protected by waterway access laws. And that gave us leverage, big leverage. But that night, we didn't strike. We waited. Grandpa said timing was everything. Let him come back. Let him keep pushing. The more rope he pulls, he said, the harder he'll fall. So I played, my part, walked with my shoulders low, looked tired, defeated. Meanwhile, Anna started digging through county records. Grandpa called in some favors from his army buddies. And I bought a new SD card for our security camera, one that wouldn't mysteriously erase itself every time Travis showed up, because this wasn't just about a parking spot anymore. This was about a principle. And Travis McConnell, He had no idea what kind of war he'd just started. It started with smoke, not the metaphorical kind. Real smoke, drifting in across our ranch road one Saturday morning like some bad omen. When I stepped outside, coffee in hand, I saw the unmistakable shimmer of a grill in the distance. Folding, chairs, a pop-up canopy, country music echoing off the mesquites. Travis was throwing a barbecue on our property. He wasn't alone either. At least 5 trucks lined the edge of the entrance road. Some were HOA contractor rigs, others just beat-up pickups with out-of-county plates. His crew was already half a case deep in beer by the time I reached the fence line. I wasn't angry. I was past angry. Travis waved at me like we were neighbors sharing a block party. "Morning, Dan. Beautiful day for a little community outreach, don't you think?" My jaw clenched. "This is private land." He took a bite of his burger. "Actually, we're reviewing that. According to county maps, this access road qualifies as public, utility space. You should brush up on your zoning code." I looked around. Trash already littered the gravel drive. Someone had moved our gate post to make more room for their tailgate setup. A guy with a backwards hat was pissing on a mesquite tree like it was a urinal. Grandpa stood behind me, arms crossed, calm as ever, but I saw the twitch in his jaw, the same twitch I saw once when a coyote got into our chicken coop. "Are you going to call the sheriff?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Already did. But this isn't just about law anymore. This is about a message." Anna came out next, phone in hand, snapping pictures. "Don't say a word," she warned. "Let them hang themselves with their own rope." That's when Travis made it worse. Much worse. He walked up to the fence, beer in hand, and said loud enough for the cameras, "You know, Danny boy, your little farm here? It's ruining the aesthetic of Pine Heights. That smell? Those cows? It's dragging down property values. The board's already looking into eminent domain." He said it casually, like he was telling me the weather forecast. That was the moment. I realized they weren't trying to pressure us anymore. They were trying to erase us. Anna's face went pale. "That's an actual threat," she said. "Zoning abuse, coordinated harassment, intimidation. This is civil suit material." But Travis wasn't done. He turned to Anna and gave her that look, the one I remembered from the gate. "You sure you want to stay tied down to all this?" he said. "A smart girl like you could do a lot better than this dump." I stepped forward, fists clenched, but Grandpa's hand caught my shoulder like a vice. "Don't," he said under his breath. "Let the dog bark." Travis smirked, strutted back to his little party, and turned the music up louder. Sheriff Bob Evans arrived, 20 minutes later with 2 deputies. He took one look at the mess and just muttered, "Good Lord." We gave him everything: video footage, gate post measurements, a log of every truck plate we'd recorded. Anna handed over printed maps, notarized easement documents, and a list of HOA code violations. Sheriff Evans looked it all over, then turned to Grandpa. "Walt, what do you want me to do?" Grandpa's answer was as sharp as barbed wire. "I want it documented. I want every beer can, every grill mark, every cigarette butt photographed, and I want these boys to know one thing. We don't get mad, we get even, legally." The sheriff smiled. "You've got it." After they left, Travis and his crew started packing up, but not before leaving behind a trail of trash that stretched 30 feet down the drive. He walked past me on his way to the truck and hissed, "This isn't over. You're gonna wish you were sold when you had the chance." I didn't reply, but I was already thinking about what Grandpa said the night before. Let him think he's winning. Let him get sloppy. Then we dropped the hammer. That evening, while we cleaned up broken bottles and greasy burger wrappers, Anna pulled me aside. "Danny," I traced a few of the plates. "Some of these guys don't even live in Pine Heights. Travis is bringing in outsiders, guys with records. This is orchestrated." I nodded, already expecting as much. "Which means we need to move up the timeline," I said. She tilted her head. "Timeline for what?" That's when Grandpa came walking in from the back shed, carrying a thick manila envelope. He dropped it, on the table with a thud. Inside were county records, video stills, and a notarized declaration of vehicle abandonment law. Texas state code was clear. Any vehicle left on private property for more than 72 hours could be claimed for salvage. The only problem? Travis kept rotating his truck with his friends, always just under the limit, always just enough to stay in the gray. But Grandpa had noticed something. He thinks he's clever, but he made one mistake. He handed me a photo. Travis's. Actual truck, same model, same color, but with a tiny dent in the tailgate. A dent that had not moved in 4 days. Same spot, same angle, same dent. That was all we needed. Grandpa's eyes burned like kindling about to catch. Tomorrow morning, we fired the first real shot, and I knew then we weren't just going to take back our land, we were going to make Travis regret ever stepping foot on it. There's something about the early morning quiet on a ranch, when the air's still cool, the mist hasn't burned off the fields, and you can hear every creak of a fence post like it's speaking to you. That's when Grandpa made his move. We'd been watching Travis's truck like hawks. 3 days, same dent, same tire marks in the gravel, same exact spot, right along the edge of our Sweet Creek boundary. Grandpa walked out of the house in his old army jacket, not the faded one he wore during winter, but the real one, the one with his name still stitched in olive thread over the chest. He didn't say anything, just adjusted his cap, grabbed the folder from the kitchen table, and climbed into the excavator we usually use to dig out fence posts. And then he drove it toward the truck. It was a thing of beauty, the sun rising behind him. That yellow beast of a machine roaring to life. The same one that pulled hundreds of stumps and cleared ditches after rainstorms, now headed toward a $70,000 pickup like it was a clump of weeds. I ran behind him, phone in hand, recording everything. Travis was already stepping out of the front porch of a neighbor's house, half-dressed, coffee mug in hand. When he saw the excavator barreling toward his ram, he shouted like a startled rooster. "Hey, hey! What the hell are you doing?" Grandpa didn't answer. He just stopped the excavator about 10 feet from the front bumper, engine idling, and calmly pulled out the folder. Travis stormed up like he owned the planet. "You're gonna regret this, old man. That's felony destruction of property. That's grand theft." Grandpa's voice cut through the engine like steel. According to Texas Property Code, Section 683.011, this vehicle has been abandoned on private property for more than 72 hours without permission or legal authority. That makes it eligible for salvage claim by the property owner. He held up the time-stamped photos, the video logs, the surveyor's map, everything notarized. Travis Blink. He didn't expect resistance, and he definitely didn't expect legal resistance. "This is HOA land," he said, weaker this time. That's when Anna stepped forward, binder in hand, and delivered the finishing blow. "No, Travis. According to this deed, this land, 20 feet on either side of Sweet Creek, including where you're parked, has belonged to the Briggs family since 1923, and the HOA has zero authority over it. You're trespassing. And now, you've abandoned property," Travis sputtered, reaching for his phone. "I'm calling the sheriff. You're all going to jail." Grandpa leaned forward in the excavator cab. "Good. Call him. He's expecting your call." And right on cue, Sheriff Bob Evans's cruiser pulled up the gravel road, lights flashing but siren off. Travis looked like he'd seen a ghost. Bob stepped out, calm as a man at a church potluck. "Morning, Walt." "Morning, Danny. Miss Anna." He nodded at each of us, then turned to Travis. "We've received your complaints, but I've reviewed the evidence. And you, son, have no standing here. No jurisdiction. No contract. Just a truck sitting illegally on private property for 3.5 days. But..." Travis held up his badge. Bob raised a hand. "Drop the act. That's not a badge. That's a novelty item. And impersonating law enforcement is another charge you don't want added to your list." Travis's mouth moved, but no. Words came out. Then calmly, deliberately, Grandpa pulled the control lever. The excavator's bucket lowered and scooped under the front bumper of the truck. Its front wheels lifted off the ground like a toy. "Hey!" Travis screamed. "That's my truck!" Grandpa's voice was ice. "Correction. That's an illegally parked object that has been left on my property for 84 hours and 27 minutes. Under the law, I'm responsible for its disposal. Sheriff Bob crossed his arms. Mr. McConnell, I strongly suggest you step back. Travis didn't. He lunged, right toward the excavator, but Bob's deputies were faster. They pinned him before he took 3 steps. One read him his rights. The other pulled the fake badge from his belt and dropped it into an evidence bag, and just like that, the dog was off the leash. We didn't crush the truck. Grandpa wasn't reckless. He swung it gently over Sweet Creek and held it there, letting it dangle like a threat, a warning to every clipboard-carrying tyrant in a golf cart within HOA range. Then he lowered it, slowly, with care, onto a flatbed tow truck we'd hired the day before. The operator strapped it down like a prize catch. Anna turned to me and smiled. Now that's how you repossess a bully. Sheriff Bob filed the report. Travis was booked and charged with trespassing, impersonating an officer, and obstruction. More charges were coming. Meanwhile, the HOA's phones were lighting up. Margaret Blackwell, head of the board and Travis's patron, was in damage control mode, but the war wasn't over, not yet. They still had lawyers, they still had influence at the county, but what they didn't have anymore was momentum. That was ours now, and as Grandpa said that night sitting on the porch polishing his boots, sometimes you don't need to swing the hammer. Just show them you know how. The morning after Travis got hauled off, the phone lines at the ranch were dead quiet. No patrols, no texts, no trucks parked across our gate. It should have felt like victory, but Grandpa knew better. When a snake coils back, he said over his morning coffee, it's not retreating. It's measuring its strike. And strike she did. At precisely 10 a.m., a silver Mercedes sedan pulled up outside our fence. Not a truck. Not a patrol car. This wasn't intimidation. It was diplomacy laced in perfume and pearls. Margaret Blackwell had arrived. She stepped out like she was disembarking from a yacht, not onto a gravel ranch road. Mid-60s, dressed in a blazer that probably cost more than my entire month's feed bill, her silver hair pulled back into a bun so tight it looked painful. Pearls, designer sunglasses, and a look in her eyes like the world owed her silence and submission. I walked out to meet her. She didn't wait for a greeting. You must be Mr. Briggs, she said, scanning the land like it offended her. We need to talk about your situation. My blood boiled, but I kept it cool. Yes, ma'am, we do. She eyed the cameras posted near our gate and smiled faintly. Surveillance. How quaint. Before I could respond, Grandpa stepped onto the porch. Lorraine Blackwell's daughter, he said, voice gravelly and slow. Didn't think you'd stoop to coming out here yourself. Margaret turned and gave a polite, empty smile. Mr. Briggs, always the dramatic one. I came to offer a resolution. Oh, I bet you did. She laid it out right there in the gravel. The HOA board was reviewing the boundaries between Pine Heights and our land. There were talks at the county zoning office about redistricting agricultural property near developing communities. They were exploring options like eminent domain, environmental noise impact reports, and potential code enforcement referrals. And then came the offer. I'm sure we can come to an agreement. A buyout, a generous one. You and your family could move somewhere more fitting. Fitting? I asked. She waved a hand toward the ranch. This place is outdated, obstructive. It's lowering the property values of the community we're trying to build. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Grandpa didn't. This ranch fed people during the Depression. It's older than every brick in your neighborhood. You don't get to erase history because it doesn't match your landscaping. Margaret's voice dropped, silk turning to steel. Mr. Briggs, we have legal pathways you haven't even imagined yet. You're surrounded on 3 sides by HOA jurisdiction. You can't win this. Grandpa smiled, slow and cold. That's the thing about farmers, ma'am. We don't plant seeds unless we're damn sure they'll grow. And right now we're planting lawyers, documents, and witnesses. Her lip curled slightly. The mask was slipping. Before she could unleash whatever was next, Anna stepped out, her Own binder in hand. You might want to review Section 5.3 of the county's Property Protection Ordinance, Anna said, voice clear. Any attempt to forcibly rezone agricultural land without consent violates both state and federal law, especially when it's protected by pre-existing easements and water rights. Margaret turned to face her, eyes narrowing. And you are? Anna extended her hand. Anna Reyes, law graduate, property rights intern at Wilcox and Moore, and, she added with just the right amount of steel, the woman your security officer sexually harassed last month. Margaret's expression shifted. Just a flicker, enough to let us know she wasn't just here to offer terms. She was here because she was losing control. This is far from over, she said, turning back to me. You don't know the kind of trouble you're stirring up. I took a step forward, inches from her polished shoes. Ma'am, I grew up branding cattle, fixing fences in 100-degree heat, and burying dogs that got too close to copperheads. I know exactly what kind of trouble looks like, and I don't scare easily. She left without another word. But we knew what was coming. The next week was hell. HOA complaints started flooding in, from anonymous residents. Offensive smells. Coming from the ranch. Dangerous wildlife seen near HOA playgrounds. Aggressive behavior from property owners. Code enforcement showed up twice. Animal control came once, claiming someone had reported neglected livestock. Each time we had cameras, paperwork, timestamps, but each time the message was clear. They were trying to grind us down with bureaucracy. Chad may have been the attack dog, but Margaret was the one holding the leash, and now she had the system. Doing her dirty work. Sheriff Bob did what he could, but his hands were tied when the complaints were legal. And Anna? She was collecting everything, building a file thicker than a phone book. Grandpa kept repeating the same phrase. Let them file their papers. Let them dig their holes. Just make sure we're the ones holding the shovels at the end. But I wasn't as calm as he was, because one night, just after midnight, I saw a truck parked down the road. Headlights off, no movement, just sitting there, watching, waiting. That's when I realized this wasn't about land anymore. This was about breaking us. But they were about to learn something Margaret Blackwell never understood. You don't break a man whose roots run deeper than your fences. And when push comes to shove, no HOA in the world stands a chance against a family with nothing to lose and everything to defend. For a few days, it seemed like things had quieted down. No more HOA goons at the gate, no anonymous complaints, no SUV with blacked-out windows watching us from down the road. Even the sheriff's weekly patrol felt routine again. But anyone who's lived through a Texas storm knows it's the silence before the tornado that makes your stomach twist, and my gut had been in knots for a week. Emily, sorry, Anna, was staying at her sister's place in town. We thought she'd be safer there, away from any more of Margaret Blackwell's little schemes. But that didn't stop the late-night texts, the blocked numbers, the kind of messages that made your skin crawl. Still choosing the farmer? You'll regret that. He can't protect you forever. You were meant for more than dirt and cattle. Anna didn't flinch. She just documented every message, every time. She was building a digital war chest, one that would make even the slimiest HOA lawyer sweat. And Grandpa? He wasn't just documenting, he was digging in. Literally. I found him out behind the barn early one morning with blueprints spread across the tailgate of his old Ford, drainage maps, county topography surveys, zoning overlays from 1973. It looked like something out of a civil engineer's fever dream. I blinked. What are you doing, Grandpa? He didn't look up. Setting the trap. And that's when he told me. Sweet Creek, the little waterway that ran through the back half of our land, wasn't just a creek. It was leverage. Under Texas law, any property with verified water access and easement history could not be reclassified without full consent of the landowner. That meant Margaret's zoning ambitions were dead in the water, literally, if we proved the HOA had encroached beyond their designated boundary. Which they had. Repeatedly. Trash from Travis's party. On camera, tire tracks, documented with timestamps. Fence damage, already filed with insurance and county property records. Every violation they made had become evidence. They think this is about intimidation, Grandpa said, pointing to a red mark on the map. But we're building a case so clean even their lawyer's going to need a mop. That's when he showed me the last piece of his plan, the alternate access route. He'd contacted an old buddy who ran a private surveying firm. Turns out there was a disused county easement running behind our property, technically public, never paved, but still legal. If Margaret and the HOA tried to cut us off through zoning or block our current road under false pretense, we could petition for emergency reactivation of that old easement and punch a new road straight through. We wouldn't just fight them. We'd go around them, but that was the legal side. Grandpa had something else in the works, too. Something symbolic. Remember the excavator? The same yellow beast he used to lift Travis's truck? Well, he'd repainted it. Bright red. On the side, in bold black letters, Private Property Enforcement Unit, Sweet Creek Division. It was petty. It was brilliant. It was Grandpa, and he parked it right by the gate, every night. A not-so-subtle reminder that if the HOA wanted to play games with authority, we had a badge of our own, one powered by diesel and 40 years of farming fury. Still, we knew something big was coming. Then, it arrived. A letter. Stamped, certified, delivered by hand. It wasn't a HOA letterhead this time, no fake citations. This was from the County Planning Commission, a scheduled hearing. 2 weeks from now. Regarding public complaints about the environmental impact, visual obstruction, and potential zoning violation at Briggs Ranch. There it was, the knockout punch Margaret had been waiting to throw. She'd pulled strings, greased the right palms. And now they were dragging us into a legal brawl in front of county officials who probably played golf with her on Sundays. But what she didn't know? We'd already dug the trenches. Anna reached out to her mentors. One of them, a former land rights prosecutor, agreed to represent us. Margaret Sloan, a woman with more courtroom victories than the entire HOA board, had fake badges. Sheriff Bob promised to testify on our behalf. The county surveyor confirmed our water rights, and every neighbor Travis had ticked off. They were lining up to speak. We weren't just defending the ranch anymore. We were defending the idea that a family's history, blood, and legacy didn't get swept aside because someone in a pantsuit thought cows didn't match their neighborhood vibe. As Grandpa said, looking out across Sweet Creek at sundown, they wanted a war of papers. We gave them a war of proof. And in 2 weeks, we'd walk into that courthouse not as victims, but as a family that refused to be erased. Courthouse room 3B smelled like old paper and cheap polish. It had the air of a place where people get quietly crushed by forms they never understood, surrounded by men in ties pretending it's all just procedure. But not that day. Not for us. That day, we weren't the ones being crushed. We were the storm rolling in. The hearing had been scheduled for 9:00 a.m. sharp, but by 8:15 the line to get in stretched down the hall. Not just neighbors, farmers, vets, local business owners, retired ranchers in their Sunday best. Some of them I barely knew. Most just nodded as they walked past us. We heard what they did. Not gonna let them get away with it. About time someone stood up to those HOA snakes. Inside, at the head of the hearing table, sat 3 county commissioners. In the middle, Douglas Hatch, a man with a bald spot like a pie tin and the energy of a DMV printer. To his left, a woman I recognized from real estate signs, Linda Krieger, who once tried to buy land from us for development purposes. Of course. And to their right, Commissioner Mark Ellis, the only one who looked like he'd ever seen a tractor up close. And across the room, in a crisp navy blazer and a face full of smugness, Margaret Blackwell. She sat flanked by 2 HOA attorneys, lips pursed like she'd smelled cow dung on the carpet. The hearing opened with the official language: review of zoning concerns, environmental impact, and community integrity regarding agricultural parcel intersecting Pine Heights HOA. Anna leaned toward me and whispered, They're trying to reframe your ranch as a threat to their community. I smiled. Then let's show them what the community really looks like. Margaret's lawyer stood first. Spoke for 20 minutes. Visual inconsistency. Noise disturbances. Reduced property values. And then, the kicker. Concerns over the behavior and attitude of the landowners. That was when Grandpa chuckled. Loud enough to echo off the wood paneling. When they were done, Commissioner Hatch turned to us. Mr. Briggs, Ms. Reyes, you may present your response. Anna stood first, binder in hand, eyes laser sharp. She opened with a clear, confident voice. The P. Briggs family has owned and operated their ranch since 1923, predating both Pine Heights and the HOA by nearly a century. We have documented proof of waterway easement rights, unbroken property tax filings, and continuous legal ownership. She laid out maps, printed messages, the video still of Travis's truck lifted by the excavator, then played a brief clip showing the HOA cookout on private property. Laughter, loud music, beer, and a very clear shot of Travis flipping the camera off. The room shifted, whispers spread like brush fire. Then came the big one, a printed text message. You were meant for more than dirt and cattle. Anna turned to the board. This is what the HOA calls community protection. Harassment, threats, and attempts to force out a generational family with legal property rights. This is not about zoning. This is about control. Then she stepped back. Next, Grandpa stood. No notes, just his voice. I buried my father on that land, my wife too. My grandson came back to work with me, and we did it the honest way. Fence by fence, calf by calf. I fought men with guns, men with power, and men with paper, but the ones that scare me most are the ones with fake authority and no shame. The silence in that room was heavy. And then came our last witness. Sheriff Bob Evans, in uniform, badge polished. He read directly from his report. Multiple documented incidents of trespassing by HOA representatives, misuse of a fake badge, false police reports filed by Travis McConnell, verified records of stalking and intimidation. In my 28 years of service, Bob said, I've never seen a private organization overreach this far without consequences, and if this board allows it to continue, then you're telling every landowner in this county, you're next. When he sat down, it was over. But Margaret didn't know it yet. She stood, flustered but trying to hold ground. These are dramatic stories, yes. But this isn't about emotion. It's about preserving community standards. I stood there, calm, quiet. Just one sentence. If your idea of community means destroying the people who were here before you, then maybe it's not. A community worth preserving. Boom. Even Commissioner Ellis nodded. The board went into deliberation. 20 minutes later, they returned. Commissioner Hatch cleared his throat. It is the board's finding that the Pine Heights HOA has no legal claim, jurisdiction, or authority over Briggs Ranch, its access road, or Sweet Creek boundaries. All complaints are hereby dismissed. But it didn't stop there. Commissioner Krieger, clearly annoyed, added, Furthermore, we recommend a formal investigation into the conduct of HOA security operations, specifically concerning Mr. McConnell's impersonation of law enforcement. And, just like that, the floodgates opened. 3 HOA families walked out of the room and over to us. One offered cookies, another asked if we needed help fixing the gatepost, and the third, Margaret doesn't speak for all of us. She just scares. The ones who let her. Not anymore. That night, as the sun sank behind the hills, Grandpa and I sat on the porch. He rocked slowly, the kind of rhythm you earn over decades of weathering storms. Think that's the end of it? I asked. He sipped his tea, never looking. Up? End? Nah, just the part where they learn who they're messing with. We didn't celebrate with applause or whiskey. We celebrated in silence. With dinner on the porch, the hum of crickets serenading us, and warm yellow porch light glinting off a glass of sweet tea. With Grandpa's steady gaze following Sweet Creek as it trickled by, like the blood in his veins was finally flowing without the weight of buried anger. The iron gate at the ranch entrance had been rebuilt, straighter, sturdier than ever, etched directly into the steel. Private property. No highway access, no frills, no decoration, just a cold, irrefutable declaration. We never heard another word from Margaret Blackwell after the hearing. Rumor had it she resigned from the HOA board after several members demanded a full audit of finances and special security operations. Some residents of Pine Heights started reaching out, offering shy apologies, homemade pies, or simply silence. The kind that carries gratitude. As for Travis McConnell, he's awaiting trial. The charges? Impersonating a police officer, trespassing, harassment, perjury, and property damage. And that's just the provisional list. When Anna's lawyer filed a civil suit, I heard the man cried in his holding cell. But what mattered most to me was this. Anna no longer flinched when a truck passed our gate. She came back to the ranch stronger than ever. Each night we'd sit under the stars, her studying for the bar exam, scribbling down dreams of what to do once she got her license. "I want to open an office right in town," she said, "so people like your grandpa, like you, never have to fear someone hiding behind rules and a blazer ever again." I said nothing, just held her hand a little tighter. A month later, we threw a cookout on the lawn beside Sweet Creek, the very spot where Travis used to park his truck. Only now, it was filled with laughter, the smell of grilled ribs, and the soft glow of paper lanterns strung across the newly built white fence. Neighbors, friends, even a few former HOA members came. No titles, no clipboards, just folks breaking bread together. Grandpa stood at the head of the table, raising his glass of sweet tea instead of whiskey. Someone once told me, land is what people die over, but you live by keeping it. I don't need anyone to validate that because tonight you're standing on it. A few seconds of quiet, then applause. That night, after everyone had gone home, Grandpa and I sat by the creek. He watched the water shimmer beneath the moonlight, like a whisper from long ago. "You know," he murmured, "they're not afraid of laws, Danny. They're afraid of people who know how to use the law and without bowing." I nodded. "And they're afraid of people who remember what it cost to keep this land." He chuckled softly, warm, a little bitter and proud. "You know why I love Sweet Creek? Not because it's pretty, but because it never stops flowing. Even when no one's looking, I was still, and I understood." Sweet Creek. The creek of land, of memory, of bloodline. It was the one thing Margaret and the HOA would never comprehend. It couldn't be paved over. It couldn't be threatened. It couldn't be rewritten in a closed-door session. They tried to turn the Briggs Ranch into an aesthetic nuisance. We turned it into a public lesson. And if anyone dares to try again, well, Grandpa's backhoe is still parked by the gate. The paint's still fresh, and Sweet Creek still flows. Always will.